Pete Hegseth just crossed a big fat line saying there are no rules of engagement. Wait, hold on. A retired general saying that there are no rules of engagement? He confirmed on camera that those aren't just reckless words. They're the words of someone who could be hauled before the International War Tribunal. This isn't exaggeration. This is dangerous. You hear that? A military officer just said that the language used by a sitting Secretary of Defense could have consequences far beyond politics. We're talking about the kind of talk that could send someone straight to war crimes court. And yes, people, this is reality. And in the midst of 2 weeks of devastating casualties, closed straits, Iranian retaliation, a global economic hit, and a girls' school being struck, what was the president's response? Well, it's chilling. Brace yourselves, he said, and I'm quoting directly, "We're going to hit them again just for fun." Just for fun? You heard that right. A general, someone who spent their whole life sending people into combat, told us what's going through his mind when he hears something like that. His response? It sounds like a bunch of frat boys talking. He goes on to say, "Death and destruction and the harmful impact on human beings is not fun." Those aren't my words, folks. Those are the words of a military expert. Let's watch and break this down together.
General, thanks for joining us this morning. We've heard a lot from the president over the course of the weekend about the enormous destructive capability of the American military over the last 2 weeks in Iran. We've seen those dramatic, maybe bizarre videos that the White House has been putting out in frequent numbers, interspersing attack videos with cartoon pictures. And yet we still see the Iranians managing to retaliate. Have you been surprised by what the Iranians are still able to do 2 weeks into this bombing campaign, and how much leverage they still seem to have?
I've not been surprised, Kathy, and here's why. The Iranians have had multiple opportunities to learn from the attacks that have occurred against their country in the first place. And, I have an article coming out today in the Bulwark entitled "The Enemy Gets a Vote." That always happens in combat. You can't control the chaos which occurs in combat. You can only attempt to plan for it and adjust and adapt as it happens. You don't, no matter what side you're on, you don't say, "I will predict the end of the war will be next week or in 3 weeks," because it will always foil your projections. It's just a human dimension of what conflict is all about, and it's so incredibly personal that you have to have really smart people planning for not only the original strategy, but also the branches and sequels of what's happened. I was reflecting, I don't think I answered Jonathan's question from earlier when he said, is the military doing all the things that they should be doing? I'm paraphrasing there. But I think what we're talking about, whenever you get into combat or before you enter combat, there's a term I'll introduce you all to. It's called troop to task. When you know what you're asked to accomplish as a military force, you assign troops to that specific task. You can't just wing it and do it on the fly when things start changing and say, well, we're gonna have people escorting literally hundreds of ships, huge cargo tankers through the straits, and that's a last minute notice because you haven't planned for it. I understand that there's a report in a paper this morning, the news report, saying that General Kane had told them that told the administration there was a high probability that the straits would be closed. If that's the case and they waved it off saying, no, that won't happen, we're going to be so devastating.
Okay, let's start with something that's honestly getting way too little attention, but it should be at the top of every conversation: the munitions issue. This is honestly genuinely alarming, and it's being buried under everything else. Here's the thing: we do not have unlimited missiles. That claim, the one that both Hegseth and Trump have made so casually, publicly, well, according to the general, those claims are absolutely political propaganda and flat-out lies. And that's not my opinion. That's a military expert saying it. The United States doesn't have a bottomless supply of missiles, folks. We produce a small number of certain missile types per month, not per day. We're talking about monthly production, not some endless stockpile. And guess what? We are firing them constantly. Every missile we fire at Iran is one less missile available to defend Taiwan, one less to defend South Korea, and don't forget, We've already pulled THAAD batteries from there to redeploy them to the Middle East. And let's not forget this crucial fact. Every missile fired at Iran is also one less available to defend the United States itself. Think about that. We're talking about resources that we need to defend our own people being used up with no end in sight. This isn't just about Iran, folks. This is about the long-term security of the entire world, and we need to get serious about it.
As we've said since the beginning, capable partners are good partners. Unlike so many of our traditional allies who wring their hands and clutch their pearls, hemming and hawing about the use of force. America, regardless of what so-called international institutions say, is unleashing the most lethal and precise air power campaign in history. B-2s, fighters, drones, missiles, and of course, classified effects. All on our terms, with maximum authorities. No stupid rules of engagement, no nation-building quagmire, no democracy-building exercise, no politically correct wars. We fight to win, and we don't waste time or lives. As the president warned, an effort of this scope will include casualties. War is hell, and always will be. A grateful nation honors the 4 Americans we have lost thus far and those injured. The absolute best of America. May we prosecute the remainder of this operation in a manner that honors them. No apologies, no hesitation, epic fury for them and the thousands of Americans before them, taken too soon by Iranian radicals.
Now, let's take a step back and look at the strategic picture, because this is where things start to get really serious and where the general made an astounding claim. Trump has already lost this war. The original goal, you remember, was to reduce Iran's nuclear capability, but whether that mission has been accomplished is honestly unclear. And here's where the general really hits hard. He points out something that we've all been hearing for decades. The United States and Israel have been warning us that Iran is just 2 weeks away from a nuclear weapon for 30 years. Let that sink in. 30 years of the same warning. And guess what? That kind of framing Iran is 2 weeks from a bomb has always been convenient. It's been used as a justification for military action, and more importantly, it's been kept vague enough to be recycled whenever it's needed. This isn't just about nuclear threats. This is about a narrative that's been spun and reused over and over again as a way to keep the pressure on and justify everything that's followed.
Let's start with this rhetoric from Hegseth. This is a guy who publicly defended war criminals before. What do you hear when he says no rules of engagement?
First of all, thank you for taking the time, as you did a few minutes ago, to recognize the fallen. Every single military member who is killed or wounded in action, their lives actually impact dozens of their families. So thank you for taking that time. Secondly, I want to be very clear. The words that the Secretary of Defense said are absolutely the words of potential war criminals. Those are the kind of words in terms of no rules of engagement, the idea that no quarter be given. Putting it bluntly, the president cannot protect this Secretary of Defense, even if he does give him a pardon for any crimes. The International War Tribunal will potentially consider this Secretary of Defense for war crimes against humanity.
General, as somebody who has served in the military, I want you to kind of fact check for our viewers this constant claim that we hear from people like Pete Hegseth that we have unlimited munitions, that we have unlimited firepower, that this war could last as long as we want it to last. We hear that also from the president. There is this kind of arrogance to dismiss the fact that resources are being spent, not just financial resources, but human resources as well. And the fact that we're taking pieces away from South Korea to protect our allies and assets in South Korea and bringing them to the Middle East to protect countries there.
It is absolutely political propaganda and lies that we have unlimited resources. Think about it. That implies that we have as many missiles, unlimited, infinity. Not true. Absolutely not true. It also disturbs me greatly when the president himself says, we're going to hit them again just for fun. It sounds like a bunch of frat boys talking about something. Death and destruction And the harmful impact on human beings is not something fun. And it's very disturbing whenever we have our senior leaders discussing it in terms like this. The criteria for what the purpose of the war is keeps changing, and therefore the American people do not know, and the world does not know, when will all this nightmare end, such that we will not see, for example, gas prices exceed $4 a gallon, which will happen in the next month, given what is happening.
So here's where Trump stands now. If the nuclear goal was ever truly achieved, something that's still not confirmed, he lost the moment he failed to declare victory and instead decided to push further. And what has that led to? Well, the consequences have been devastating. We're now dealing with a global economic crisis. Oil is over $100 a barrel. American service members are dead. A girls' school has been struck. And here's the most disturbing part. There's no clear end game in sight. But it doesn't stop there. Hegseth has slashed the number of personnel tasked with investigating civilian casualty incidents from 200 to just 40. And that's not all. He's been systematically eliminating JAGs, the military lawyers whose entire role is to ensure operations comply with the laws of war. He's ignored their legal counsel and even publicly declared that there are no rules of engagement. And then the general cuts to the heart of it. This administration is saying we are above the law. That's not just a condemnation of the Secretary of Defense. That's a direct attack on every single person wearing a uniform. Because if they follow an order under that doctrine, they are operating under a system that shuns accountability and ignores the rule of law.